Right? Okay.
Hi everyone. Thank
Hey
you so much
man,
for having me.
thank you so much for being here, man.
I'm a huge fan of the Wingley update. I've seen every episode, so I'm
Yeah, you're
super
actually
pumped,
one of.
super excited to be here.
Wow, I
Wow,
love
it's
it.
probably a dream come true.
So tell
It
us,
is.
tell us.
It's like being on TV.
what do you mean? What do you mean like being on TV? This is the format, man.
So what do you like about Wingley Update?
Oh, I just love the mix of casual banter with some arms crossing into the other camera sometimes, uh, and the mixing of live coding. So you don't only talk about the features, you actually show them while typing, which is an awesome way to do it. And I've seen it a lot, do it 100 times with the CDK before. So it's always a joy to see. So yeah, I love the format, and I love the way you guys, the dynamics between you two is very
Oh,
interesting.
nice. Thank you, man. That's nice.
Okay,
So we want you want,
we need to process.
yeah, to have good dynamics. So
No, we're actually having a lot of fun with this thing, and it's helping us a lot to kind of like take a second and thought what we've been doing and take a toll and go over the PR. It's like this
Yeah,
really
and
nice
celebrate, right? You guys are
celebrate.
working
Yeah.
hard, right? Elad is submitting gigantic PRs.
right,
So you need to take a
right,
second to celebrate the wins, right? I think it's a very
Exactly.
important part of the work.
right. Yeah, that's correct.
So what's up, Adam? It's been like a while since we last chatted and
Yeah, it has been.
met for
Do you?
sure. Like when was the last time we met? I think probably
Oof, yeah. I think it was before the pandemic when we last saw each other in person. So it was
pre-pandemic.
many years ago now, I guess. But I feel like we've seen each other quite a bit through the magic of the internet since. So yeah, I knew about Wing a little bit before the general public. Elad talked to me about, we're gonna release this new programming language. So I was super excited when I saw it dropped. I immediately signed up for the closed alpha to try it out. Yeah, and I've been very closely monitoring what's happening in that space, because I think it's a very interesting area that a lot of innovation is happening, and Wing is on the forefront of it.
It's awesome to hear, man. Um, so maybe take us back a little bit, hear about your background, your journey. I guess from whenever you feel like it's the right time to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll settle the all was I a contributor or an engineer on the CDK debate. So yeah, so I joined Amazon in 2015, and similar to Elad, I joined in the retail space. So while Elad was in search, I was in Amazon Business, which is like a version of Amazon.com that's geared towards other companies being the customer versus an individual consumers like us. So there's a bunch of features for companies to make that easier, right? You can group accounts into an organization, you can share payment methods, you can do approval workflows, spending limits, right? A lot of those things that companies that shop on Amazon.com need. So I worked there for around 2 years, and I remember the thing that really blew my mind when I joined Amazon was the amount of developer tools that were internal to the company. It was just staggering to me. Like Amazon had its own source control systems, it had its own build and dependency management system, its own deployment system, its own continuous integration system, and a separate continuous deployment system, right? It had something for secrets, for certificates, right? And endpoints, right? If you wanted to expose an API publicly, and probably 10 or 20 that I'm forgetting right now. So
Yeah.
just the
And
sheer,
multiple duplicates of each
Yeah.
one,
10 or
basically.
20 just for you.
absolutely,
Exactly.
yes, an old one that was deprecated 10 years ago, but the
But
new one never got the
70% of
one
the traffic,
feature.
but still 70% of the traffic. And then, yeah,
Yes,
it's fascinating. It is.
absolutely. Yeah. So I've never seen that before. So I previously worked at smaller companies in Poland, where I'm originally from, and we used maybe things like Jenkins, right, or Gerrit for code reviews, but nobody would dream of like writing its own internal tool that's only used in the company, and it has a team of engineers, right, kind of maintaining and adding features to it. So I remember that was just a complete surprise to me, and I became very curious, like how does this whole organization that has all of these teams and maintains all of these tools, how does it work? So in 2017, I had the opportunity to move to Seattle, where I'm still at right now, and to join AWS in one of those teams that maintains these internal tools. And it was actually a very interesting team because it was also an infrastructure as code team, not the CDK, however. That's the interesting part. So this tool predates the CDK actually by a few years, and it was meant to automate interacting with all of those internal systems that are just mentioned, right? Because there were so many of them and they were becoming so complex that people were kind of tired, or hey, we have to go to the web portal for each of these tools and click something in the UI. We should do it in an automated fashion, right? Kind of the same journey that a lot of the tools in AWS went through. So this tool, however, was very different than the CDK. So first of all, it was written in Ruby, and that was the only language that was supported by it. And Ruby is not a particularly popular language inside of Amazon. It's used a little bit, but it's nowhere near as popular as the other big languages like Java or Python or JavaScript. So a lot of people were learning Ruby only to use this language, which was a little bit of friction. And in addition, Ruby's dynamic language really made it a little bit difficult sometimes because you wanted to configure this thing, but you didn't even know what properties you could pass in there, right? So you had to go to the documentation and make sure you pass the property called ABC, and it's a string, it's not an integer, right?
And not only you had to pass properties, you had to like override callbacks, right? Like the whole
Yes,
programming model was like callback based.
absolutely. That was the other very interesting thing about it. That yes, instead of you calling something, it was like we will call you. So you wrote a class that extended a base class, and then you implemented methods for it. So if you had your application was in the test environment, and then the pre-prod environment, then prod, your method would be called 3 times, each with different arguments, and then you would do different things based on those arguments.
Oh,
And a lot of people had a very tough time understanding that model. It was a huge point of problems, I remember, and a huge point of confusion for customers of this tool. And we had to explain like this model over and over again. So, I was working on that team. And then in late 2017, I got an email from an engineer named Elad. I've never heard of the guy before, but he claimed that he had developed a different sort of infrastructure as code tool with his team, and he was coming to Seattle to demo it. So I unfortunately couldn't make the demo live. I remember I had a conflict then, but it was recorded, fortunately. So I saw the recording, and I was just blown away by how cool it was. So this was Cloud Struct, which was Elad's precursor to the CDK, and it was written in Java. So it immediately solved like at least one of the big issues, which was it was not this exotic language that you had to learn. 90% of the developers probably inside of Amazon knew Java, and the statically typed nature of it really helped, right? So hey, I wanted to configure something, I just pressed dot and then control space, and I got a beautiful list of things I can set. And I knew this was an integer, this was a string, and this was a complex type, right? That I had to create an instance of, right? And the callbacks were completely gone, right? So if you wanted to create free of something, you just wrote a loop, right? That did something 3 times. So, and I also remember distinctly that Elad showed unit tests for your infrastructure code. So you could write a JUnit test like any other Java code that would instantiate some of these cloud structs and then assert that they generate the correct cloud formation. And I remember that was like, wow, that is just unbelievable that you can do that with an infrastructure as code tool. I've never seen that level of like testing supported there. So I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And yeah, Elad mentioned that he was spinning up a new team that was going to work basically on the public version of CloudStruct, right? And that was what was became later the CDK. And because our two teams were two infrastructure as code teams in the same organization, we collaborated quite closely, right? And I made sure that I was, involved in all of the talks between our teams. And yeah, I became a contributor. Even though I worked on this other team, I contributed heavily to the CDK, usually the parts in the code suite space. So all of the AWS services for code pipeline, code build, code deploy, etc. Yeah, and after about a year of this collaboration, I had so much fun working on the CDK, and it was taking off like a rocket ship. Like people were just absolutely loving the CDK, and especially compared to the tool
Yeah.
in Ruby, there was a very large, I would say, lovability gap between the two tools.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to add. That one of the biggest reasons, in my mind, that CDK was so successful at Amazon was that this project that you worked on, the LPT, was mandated to all the teams,
Yes,
and that's very very rare. Like Amazon rarely requires that you have to use a certain tool, and because of Amazon's need to be able to build regions quickly, they had strong motivation to like get people to adopt this tool, and so it was like mandated, and people
absolutely.
just hated it, really hated it. People just like had their like LPT code somewhere in the project, and it was like, to be honest, it was like a crazy system, but I think like it did have some like API issues, right? Like I feel like the surface area, and eventually they kind of got merged, right? Like CDK and LPT, no?
They did finally, yes. So there are many constructs published inside of Amazon that implement those internal systems that we talked about, right? So, for example, there's a construct where you can create a continuous deployment pipeline
Yeah,
using the internal Amazon system, right?
yeah,
And it
right.
kind of looks like code pipeline, but of course has its specific quirks related to this system working a little bit differently and being more integrated with all of those internal systems at Amazon. So yes, absolutely, it was such a stark contrast that it's even hard to describe in words. Like people were just super excited when they saw the CDK, and they really wanted to use it. And I remember very quickly it became like a thing that people were advertising the CDK that we didn't even know about, right? Like it was like, oh, this development advocate is doing a talk in their AWS user group in some city about the CDK, and we've never heard about this person. They never contacted
Love
us. They never talked about it. Yeah, it just they saw the CDK, they saw it was awesome, they tried it, they used it, and now they wanted to spread the word. So uh, I really the writing on the wall was clear for me. Where is the correct direction? And I had so much fun contributing to the CDK that in 2019, early 19, I officially joined the AWS CDK. So I graduated from being a contributor to a full-time engineer. So
Demoted. You mean demoted?
I've been yes demoted to not a customer anymore, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
this time an employee, which at Amazon is a demotion, right? Because of the customer obsession. And yeah, I like to say I was the fourth engineer on the team. Technically, I was actually the fifth because Sam Goodwin, who is the co-founder of Eventual, another tool in the infrastructure from code space, was the fourth hire, but he was on the team only, I believe, for 2 months or something like that. So I like to, skip over him a little bit in the history of the CDK and
So you get a little ahead.
say exactly and say I was the fourth engineer hired after Elad, Rico, and Roma, who you had on the show
Right,
a few weeks ago.
right.
Yeah, and I had an absolute blast working on it. I worked on some cool features like the cross environment references, which were really
Okay.
important for code pipeline because you often want to deploy something in a different region or account, and that then became the basis of the CDK pipelines library. I worked on the CloudFormation include module, which allowed customers to migrate from CloudFormation to the CDK, which was a very popular ask then, because a lot of people had, even though they kind of didn't like CloudFormation, there was really no other AWS approved way, right? So they were using CloudFormation, but then they wanted to use all of the cool things in CDK. So it was important that we gave them a bridge to go from CloudFormation to the CDK, and the include module allowed you to do that. And then I worked on hot swapping and watch, right? So making it faster for local development, so that you didn't have to wait a minute each time you changed one line in your Lambda code. And a bunch of other minor things as well. But yeah, it was amazing. It was an absolute pleasure working with Elad and the rest of the team.
Dude, it's really amazing to hear this story. I mean, I think it's the first time I heard you
heard this completely.
Yeah, and it's really a privilege to have you all, in this journey, to have you here. I'm excited that you're following Wing and involved.
I'm interested. I kind of heard something and I'm not sure I completely understood. But how does the hot swapping what's the relationship with hot swapping and
Go ahead.
That's a very interesting story. Yes. So the hot swapping. So I think Elad from the start wanted to have a watch command. Like watch is like Elad's favorite command, I think. So anytime any CLI tool has a watch command, Elad will use it 100%, right? So he was,
which is why I told these guys,
Yeah.
no watch.
Yeah. Unless it has the watch functionality without the watch.
Without the watch.
Actually, exactly. There is no watch because watch is built in now, right?
Right.
You literally you cannot not watch, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Which is Elad's dream, I guess. Yeah. And logical conclusion of the journey he was on, right? So yeah, so Elad was always very, very clear that hey, CDK should have a watch command because I just want to change some code in there and just see it deployed as quickly as we can do it. But the issue there was, well, the deployments in CloudFormation are kind of slow, right? So yes, we can do a watch command, right? But if between when you save your file and when it's actually in the cloud, it takes like a minute or two, then it's not exactly the watch that everybody's used to, right? So we were tasked with kind of figuring out the problem. Okay, so how do we make deployments quicker? And this is not an easy task. So this kind of the CloudFormation team knows that the deployments currently are slow. We're not breaking them any huge news. Hey guys, that they didn't know about.
We thought we did, but they were like, yeah, we know.
Yeah, we know exactly, and we can't because of these 8 reasons, right? Why this service is modeled this way. It's always going to be at least 30 seconds if it's like a minimum.
Yeah.
Right?
I think eventually they're just a messenger, right? Like behind them, there's the whole control plane of the cloud, and the control plane is fucking slow because nobody wants to, the whole point of a control plane is to basically optimize the data plane, right? So you would wait much more time in the control plane because that's the time that you. So to me, this was actually. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, you're completely right. And one of the issues is that when you do a deployment in CloudFormation, they don't know whether this is your stupid local stack that you're just playing with, or are you just deploying your production, application that takes in $100 million, right, every day. So they have to be the most conservative, right? They have to wait the longest amount of time before the resources stabilize, right? And make really sure that the update actually completed, right? But we realized, I think that was like the breakthrough idea that we had, like, hey, for deployment, of your local stack, there's no reason to have all of these safeguards, right? Like, I don't care. I just want to see my thing being updated as quickly as possible, and don't wait on stuff. Like, if it doesn't work, doesn't matter because I have to wait anyway, right? You're not really buying me anything when I'm doing this locally, right? Maybe you're buying me something when this is an automated pipeline that needs to wait on it. But on my local machine, I don't care, right? So the crucial idea behind hot swapping was basically, let's completely skip the cloud formation part and go to the resources directly, and call the control planes of the resources that we are hot swapping directly, skipping cloud formation, and in this way telling them, hey, just update this as soon as you can, and don't don't do a rolling deployment, right? Like you would do, right? Don't do a blue-green deployment right? That would be even worse. Just swap this code in and return to me as quickly as possible. And that allowed us to do, Lambda deployments, for example, in I think like
And
3 or
Docker
4
also.
seconds.
Oh,
Yes,
nice.
and exactly. So then the watch experience actually made sense, right? So you saved your code, and it would take 3 to 4 seconds before your code would be on the cloud and you could test it, right? So yeah, and we did this for a bunch of services. Yeah, so Lambda was one that was very popular, but we also did it for ECS. We did it for step functions as well, which was
Wow.
very fast. If you just change the definition of your workflow, we could update it in 2 seconds or something like that. It was almost immediate. Yeah, and a bunch of other resources that I'm not remembering right now. But yeah, but this idea was really interesting and really powerful, and I think Wing's local simulator takes it to 11, kind of, right? So make
Yeah,
sure
I think
that
this is only for in-flight, basically.
yeah,
You just get this, and the whole, and in Wing you get this for the pre-flight part, right? Which is, I think, is.
Yep.
By the way, this whole project basically convinced me that the only reasonable development experience for the cloud is local, because there's a glass ceiling of
yes,
experience.
there is a natural limit that you just cannot move faster, right? So if Lambda takes a few seconds to respond, right, or if the ECS container needs like a minute to be updated, you will not be able to go faster than that. You are 100% correct.
Yeah, I had a professor who was saying that the universe is, the world is not, it's actually getting bigger. Things get farther because the speed of light is constant, but computers keep getting faster. So anything you're doing on any improvement happens only on your local host. That's what he said, kind of 14 years ago. 14 years ago.
No, but I do think it's not a popular opinion, right? To basically say you can't get to a reasonable developer experience on the cloud. I feel like there's definitely people who are.
Yeah, I think the way you phrase it a lot is that you need that standard library, right? Or you need that common set of abstractions, in order to make this a reasonable local experience, right? And I think that was the key piece, that if you just want to emulate AWS locally, that's not going to be a good experience. You're always going to be behind. You're always going to be playing catch up, and you always have discrepancies between the local experience and how the AWS services work, because they also have their quirks and specificities, right? Every complicated API does. So emulating all of that locally is probably a very difficult proposition. But
This
doing it on a standard library.
This is what local stack are doing.
Absolutely.
And I think like any resource that they simulate, I think it will be pretty stable in a sense, right? Like, because AWS APIs cannot be broken, and so any resource that you implement eventually is a stable implementation. But I think the expectation from the application is that is that they work against the API, the AWS surface area. And if that surface area keeps getting bigger, then the expectations from your applications keep getting bigger. You have to constantly feed those expectations. And I feel like that's the biggest challenge in this project. In Amazon, they call it the treadmill situation.
Yeah, and even the CDK is on that treadmill, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like all of the L2 resources the services constantly get new features, right?
Yeah.
That you have to add. There are constantly new services added that people really want to use,
Yeah.
right? Because they're really cool. And yeah, we already kind of experienced that treadmill on a much smaller scale, right? Because the CDK constructs, I think, are comparatively easier to write than, a whole API, right? That you have to emulate. And it was already kind of a challenge. So yeah, I think the
But
treadmill is
again,
definitely real.
I think like the important difference is that CDK had L1s. There was always escape hatches.
Yes. Yes. So we always could say, yeah, we already support this through an automated process. But even with that, I think many people kind of considered a given service or feature not supported if it was not supported on the L2 level, right? Because that was the predominant way we
Correct.
always explained to people, this is the preferred way to use the CDK, right? So if our preferred way was missing this, the expectation was like, well, it's not really supported. It's supported in
Right.
this kind of second class a little bit way,
Correct.
right?
Correct. I think we'll have similar problems with Wing or similar challenges with Wing, right? Like what's in the SDK, that's a first class citizen, right? It has local experience. It has, and I think like one of our challenges is going to be to like help libraries, raise the bar on what they capabilities they give the local experience. For example, kind of like requiring a local experience for libraries might be something that can really help make sure
Absolutely.
that. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's like the
Yeah, and
ecosystem design.
exactly. And you can make it easier, right? Maybe you have a library, that is a bunch of helpers that allow you to kind of hook into the simulator, right? So the offer of the resource, right, has a really, nice set of, hey, to make this work in the simulator, I just have to call these 4 APIs, right? And it's kind of easy. So why not add it, right?
Yeah, like running containers is an example we discussed.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like classic.
Yeah. Or sending a message, right? Like you have that nice, text box, right? When you can
Oh,
push
you
a
mean like
message to the queue, right? Or put a
The
file into the bucket,
interactions.
right?
Yeah, the resource interactions on the console. It's definitely something we'll have to basically kind of create an API for developers. It's something that we want to see people interact with. Awesome.
Okay, Eyal is signaling me that we're out of time.
Yeah, and someone is nodding behind. You met that someone already.
And this guy is like running around naked.
And I think I'm getting notifications that Mark is falling asleep. So I think we're gonna have to move this. First of all, thank you, Adam. You said it before. You could talk a lot about the CDK.
Right.
This was extremely interesting. I really loved your intro. It was a great setups and.
I feel we need to like have.
I have a feeling we're gonna see you again in the show. Yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna see you again in the show. Another chat. Yet another chat with other.
That's gonna be a whole corner.
Yeah,
we'll have a
I
logo.
would love to. Yes, like I said, I can talk about the CDK for hours. It's such an interesting area, and thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure, and I would be honored if you invited me again. It would be awesome.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Bye, man.
Thank you.